Welcome. I'm Julie Thompson, Executive Director of pac-tv, and today we're hosting a COVID-19 update for the town of Kingston. We'll hold these forums every Tuesday and Friday at 10:30 a.m. Watch in Kingston on Comcast Channel 15 and Verizon 42, or watch online on our streaming channel by visiting pac-tv.org/live. To ask questions during the forum, please email them to kingstoninfo@pac-tv.org. For the forum replay schedule and additional Kingston meeting coverage, please visit pac-tv.org/Kingston. Today's participants include District Attorney Timothy Cruz, Paul Gallagher, who is the town clerk for the town of Kingston, the town administrator, Tom Coulter, and of course our host, the chair of the Kingston Board of Selectmen, Josh Warren. Josh, take it away.
Julie, thank you again for organizing these twice weekly updates. I know Kingston residents really appreciate having the opportunity to hear from elected officials, appointed officials, and the staff that are hard at work every day. Now remotely or through the various buildings across town. Just a couple of quick updates before we we get into some questions with our guests. Yesterday afternoon, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health announced that there were 5,083 confirmed positive cases of COVID-19 in Plymouth County. It was a sad day that we surpassed that 5,000 mark, but I think we all sort of anticipate seeing these numbers climb as tests become more readily available and as more and more residents have access to them. That number represents an increase of 212 from the previous day. So we'd had a couple of days where we were actually seeing declining numbers in the reporting, and yesterday they jumped back up again. I know, as many viewers probably do, that Governor Baker's looking at the rates of hospitalization, the rates of new confirmed cases, and using that as a benchmark for when the state may be able to reopen. So seeing them increase again was, a little bit of a step back. But yesterday, the town of Kingston also was informed that we had one additional confirmed positive case of COVID-19, and that brings the town's total to 57. I've said it on a number of these programs, but I do want to say this again. I think when you look at the numbers across the county and you look at the number of confirmed positive cases that we have here in Kingston, and you take into account that 29 are from one facility, I just think that speaks volumes about how residents have responded to this public health crisis. No one enjoys having to put a mask on. No one enjoys having to vigilantly wash their hands every time they're in and out of the house, or unpacking groceries, picking up mail, so on and so forth. But I do think that our numbers really, go to show that residents are taking this seriously. The town is taking this seriously, and everyone's doing their best and working together to make sure that COVID-19, doesn't have as significant an impact on our residents as it would if we weren't doing these things. So I just want to thank everyone again. One other little bit of housekeeping that I want to cover, pursuant to the Board of Selectmen's vote on the 28th, the due date for real and personal property tax bills has been extended from May 1st to June 1st. Payments can be made by using the drop box outside of the townhouse. They can be remitted by sending in a check to the address that's on the bill. And there's also an online portal if folks are more comfortable making those payments from home right now. And the website there is epay.cityhallsystems.com. If anybody has questions about the extended deadline or their real or personal property tax bills, they're advised to call the Kingston Tax Collector's Office, and that number is 781-585-0507. Again, 781-585-0507. Joining us today, we have District Attorney Cruz, we have Tom Coulter, our town administrator, and we have Paul Gallagher, our town clerk. I'm grateful that they've all taken time out of their busy schedules. I know everybody's, running around doing the work that they're typically charged with, in addition to responding to this public health crisis. So I'm grateful that they've all made the time to speak to us, and I hope that folks that are watching at home, get a lot out of this program. DA Cruz, I'd like to start with you. Your office plays a vital role in the Kingston community. Can we just begin with an introduction? I don't know if folks are as familiar with you as they are Tom and Paul. And can you tell us about the work that your office is charged with and how you and your staff have had to adapt how you work throughout this pandemic?
Sure, Josh. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak, and I appreciate pac-tv and everybody else coming here today to talk about the issues that they're dealing with. Here in Plymouth County, the District Attorney's Office, we're the chief law enforcement official for the County of Plymouth, which means every case, every criminal case, state criminal case that occurs in Plymouth County, from trespass to homicide, is prosecuted by the local police, but the actual lawyers in court work at the Plymouth DA's office. Every year in Plymouth County, we have roughly between 18 and 19,000 criminal cases, of which we have 60 lawyers who are in the four different district courts here in Plymouth County. And Kingston is assigned to Plymouth District Court, like it's always been. The new Plymouth Court down Exit 5 down in Plymouth. And that's the jurisdiction. If something occurs in Kingston, it would end up going down there. But we deal with many different issues in trying these cases and putting these cases together and trying to make sure that we go forward. Really, what's the best thing that we can do for our county to keep people safe and for the victims in the cases? And that's one thing that we can never forget, is that every case that we're dealing with somebody whose lives has been affected by some crime that's occurred, whether it be against their person, against somebody they love, against their property. There's always something going on, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we stand up and try to help them as best as we can. And I think in a situation like where we are now, it's definitely different. As we all know, we're living in a situation whereby I think we're going to, after this is all said and done, we'll be living in a new normal. But right now, what we're doing in our county, which I said we have four district courts in Plymouth, Hingham, Brockton, and Wareham. We have two superior courts in Brockton and in Plymouth. And all those cases will work their way through that system. And also assigned to our office, we have 24 state police troopers who are assigned to our office to investigate all unsolved, unattended deaths that occur in our county, and also any major drug cases that may be going on. The best thing is we work really well with our local police. We work really well with the Kingston police. Chief Splain has been doing a great job down there as the chief. Just recently, I reached out to him a couple of weeks ago because he's also not only the Kingston police chief, but he's also the current president of the Plymouth County Police Chiefs. We were trying to fight against individuals being released from prison who, quite honestly, would make our current public safety situation much less safe. People who are currently doing time on homicides, rapes, child molestation, serious cases like that defense attorneys were trying to get released back into our community. I reached out to Chief Splain immediately. He was my first call, and he organized the Plymouth County Police Chiefs to put together a letter in opposition to that. And I think it was very forceful to the extent that we get other police chiefs from all across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to make sure that we look at each of those cases on an individual basis and not just make some bright line where individuals could be released. So every day we're prosecuting cases, and at the same time we're dealing with a lot of trying to get in front of a lot of issues. And I think that may be one thing. When I go out and talk about what the DA's office does, people will ask me, well, what does the DA do? And I'll often say, do you watch Law and Order? Do you watch CSI? And people will go, oh, yeah, yeah. And I'll say, well, it's nothing like that. That's television. We're out here to do our job and to make sure that we can best keep people safe in a just fashion and making sure that people are held accountable for their actions and we keep people safe. So while we're doing that, we're also dealing with many other issues, which I know we're going to talk about today, whether the ongoing domestic violence issue, internet safety issues, the scams that are going on right now, and trying to get the word out to people to try to protect things, because the best way that we can try to help people is prevent things before they happen. And so we continue to try to do that. And there's nothing I like more than to working with the local towns and communities and trying to say, how can we best do that? Every town in our county is a little bit different. We have urban communities, we have suburban, we have rural. They're all a little bit different. And it's great to have the local flavors so we can figure out what can we best do to serve, in this instance, the town of Kingston.
Thank you. And it's interesting to hear you say the new normal. One of the phrases that I've been trying to employ is the now normal. Understanding, of course, that things are just so fluid right now in your office. I'm sure in Tom and Paul's offices. What's the new normal today may be totally different tomorrow. And just as we're all waiting for guidance from the Commonwealth and the federal government to really show us and tell us, when we will be allowed to get back to the lives that we once led, in terms of our kids being in school, ourselves being back to work. It's really that now normal. I mean, today could be very different
No, you're right.
than tomorrow and Monday. And I was going to ask you this further along in the program, but You started to talk about it, so I'd love to get into it now. Can you just speak to how local police departments have had to adapt how they work and really take on new responsibilities throughout the pandemic? I know with the court systems, not being open for arraignments and things like that. How are local police having to adjust and fill in some of those voids?
Well, we've definitely seen a slowdown in the number of actual arrests. I think police officers, for the most part, throughout our county, are not arresting individuals. What they're doing is giving them summons returnables to show up in court, unless, of course, it's a mandated arrest or a very serious matter. Like a few weeks ago, we had a homicide down in Wareham that obviously was a domestic violence issue, and we have to deal with that. However, the police right now, I think, are using their heads, making sure that they and the other first responders, our fire departments, our EMTs, all the ambulance services that show up at the various places when they're needed, they're doing, I think, a really good job, but a different job. In that, when I see the police officers out now, they all have face coverings, they have gloves in their hands, they all have the personal protection things that are so necessary for the men and women who really are the frontline warriors, the people who are putting it on the line when they walk up at a normal scene. And the normal scene is no longer that normal. So if they're in a position whereby they can continue to make sure they do their jobs, keep us safe, I think they're going to do that. But there have been arrests. We just see them down a little bit. And the arraignments that are going on now, like in the court system, the courts, the in-person things in court throughout our county and throughout the Commonwealth, according to an edict from the Supreme Judicial Court, they're closed until June 1. And we don't anticipate being able to do jury trials until July 1 at best. What I've told the people that work for me and the people that work for me in the various places here in our county is to make sure we're all ready to go on June 1 and July 1. So we're ready to, when the curtain goes up, we're ready to get our cases forward because there's going to be something of a backlog going on right now. And we have a responsibility, not just to our victims, but also to the defendants in the entire system, trying to make sure we move these cases as best as we can. So as we watch what's going on right now, as we have bail reviews, and bail reviews are all being done telephonically or video, people are not being brought to court for that. And I believe we may see some changes to that to really, once again, the new normal or the current normal as it's going to be when we move down the road here. We're going to see more of that. I think that a lot of the individuals may not need to be transported from the jails to the courthouses. And we may be able to do more on a video and audio fashion, which I think will be very cost effective for the sheriff and will be cost effective for the system itself. Now, don't get me wrong, we're always going to have to try cases. People are going to have the right to confront their accusers. We're going to have our cases in court as we always have. But I think right now, that new norm with the police, and when you talk to the police, and when I talk to police here throughout our county, although the arrests are down, don't get me wrong, there is still crime that's ongoing. And we have, right below the surface, there's still domestic violence issues. There's still in our urban communities gang issues and gun issues and shootings that have occurred during the last few weeks. That the state police who work with me are working with our local police, once again, as we always do, to try to come to a resolution to find out who's committing this crime and how can we get them off the streets. And we've been able to do that. But right now, as we sit here talking about this, the big issue right now is individuals who are either currently doing time for very serious charges or they're being held in a pretrial fashion. And their attorneys and other attorneys and groups are trying to get them released. And originally, there was a lawsuit that was filed by the Committee for Public Counsel, by the ACLU, by the MACDL, which is the Mass Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and other prisoner right groups, trying to get a lot of people released. And myself and 6 other DAs here in the Commonwealth, as well as all sheriffs, said, that's not the way to do it. Let's look at each case, facts of each case, of each individual. Every case has its own different issues that have to be looked at. Does an individual have a release plan? Do they fit in the excluded category or not? Some categories are excluded. If you're charged or doing time on certain crimes, you should not get a presumption to be released because of COVID-19. So we continue to have those hearings every day. And I appreciate the fact that the judges, I think, for the most part, listen to us. I think that we have a better understanding as to what's going on here from knowing the cases, knowing the victims. And we reach out to the victims and we talk to them and we say, listen, here's what's going on and here's what our position is. But at the end of the day, the judge makes the determination. I don't always agree with the judges, nor will I. And I don't think in an adversarial proceeding you should be doing that. You should have our argument. The defense is going to have their argument, and let them make the call. But as we sit here right now, I think the jail down at Plymouth, the Plymouth House Correction led by Sheriff McDonald, has been very safe and secure from COVID for the last 6 weeks or so. And a lot of the individuals who have been released, they have no release plans. They're being back out into our community, and they have nowhere to go. And what we're seeing is, I'm here in Brockton today, a couple blocks down from the Mainspring House. That homeless shelter is overflowing with families, with kids, with children, and to have individuals who potentially have that virus walking back and forth, and people who, because they can't comport to social distancing, they can't comport to self quarantining, they don't comport to the normal laws that we have here in the Commonwealth. I don't expect them to do that. So we put our 2 cents forward, and hopefully that we're in a position whereby we can make sure that the people are held, that should be held are held, and that we can continue to go forward with our job and work every day. The people that work for me are working remotely, the majority of them. We have them on a rotating basis. They come in from our victim witness advocates, our admins, and our assistant DAs, and myself and my executive team have been here every day, virtually for the last 6 weeks.
Thank you. And if you don't mind holding tight, I have some more questions for you, but I'm just going to jump over to the townhouse quick. And Tom, the town of Kingston is now just about 50 days into its response to this unprecedented public health crisis. And I'd love to hear from you how you feel the town has responded.
Well, Josh, first of all, I want to thank you for hosting these forums. I think they're very helpful. I also want to welcome back my old friend, Tim Cruz. I don't appreciate having to follow Tim as an extraordinary leader and a great speaker. It's always difficult to take the podium after Tim. We worked together during my 12 years in the legislature, and I don't know that I know a finer public servant. Tim, it's great to see you again.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that.
You know, Josh, different doesn't have to be bad. Different doesn't have to be worse. These are clearly different times. I am very, very, very pleased to tell you that town operations haven't missed a beat. We have no one getting paid at home that's not working. Those that are working remotely have worked very hard to develop best practices, new protocols, new procedures. They've all committed to very deep critical thinking, a strong emphasis on communication, and even stronger emphasis on collaboration. So I can tell you that things at Town Hall are working on all 8 cylinders. The town is fully functional while still honoring best practices for staying safe in response to the COVID pandemic. This is a time where, you know, it's so easy because people are stuck home, they're stuck remotely. It's so easy to occasionally get a bit negative. Town employees, I don't know that I've ever been prouder of an organization that I've had the pleasure of working with in my career. We have staff meetings Monday, Wednesday, Friday remotely. People have demonstrated that they're ready, they're prepared, they've thought through their plan of the week, they've thought through their plan of the day. They have communicated their expectations to their own staff, admin and otherwise. And I would say that morale in this town right now among town employees is the best I've ever seen it. In spite of some of the criticism that constantly comes from the gallery, the town employees to a person have all stepped up. And I want to reiterate a point that both you and the DA made is when we emerge from this, it will not be business as it used to be. There's been a lot of best practices, a lot of lessons learned, as Tim was pointing out, from having to work under these conditions. And I think that those lessons learned will help us be a more efficient, a more organized, a more practical organization. And we should be able to do it at a least cost, which is very, very important to us because we'll talk in a minute, I guess, about revenues, but our revenues are going to drop significantly. So we've got to always balance our expenses with our revenues. And some of the things that have come out of our response to COVID-19 are going to allow us to do that very effectively, very efficiently. That wouldn't be possible without the positive approach that employees in this town are taking toward doing things very differently. So I'm very pleased with and very proud of the entire team here in Kingston.
Now, you mentioned, morale is high and folks are collaborating like never before. Can you speak to the work that was done by our finance team and their advisory to the Board of Selectmen? I mean, I think that is a very strong example of the collaboration that you're seeing every single day in that building.
It's a great example, Josh. I appreciate you raising it. The governor's actions have caused us to have a local option to defer tax payments until June 1st. There are some towns that immediately jumped and did that, and that was good for their town. We convened a meeting of what we call our financial management team. It was our collector, our chief financial officer, our assessor, and our town treasurer. And we asked them to evaluate the governor's bill and to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, who had the authority to either implement it or not implement it. They met, they came to a selectmen's meeting, and they said, we'd like a little time. The escrow companies are sitting on big amounts of cash. If the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt this local option, then those escrow companies that are holding millions of dollars that they have already collected from the mortgage holders, they will hold that money for another 30 days, and that would create for any community a substantial cash flow problem. So they asked 2 weeks ago when the act came out that we hold off and reconsider it again before May 1st. They then monitored very closely, and we received all of our escrow payments. So they reconvened and went before the Board of Selectmen the other night, and they had received all except one reimbursement from one escrow company, which represented about $3.5 million. They recommended to the Board of Selectmen that they adopt the local option, subject to receiving that final payment. And the next day, the escrow company had heard about that vote, and they wired us the money immediately. And the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday night adopted that, so the citizens who are paying their taxes directly to the town can benefit from that 30-day grace period. It's an example of really smart people analyzing something very closely and making a strong, informed recommendation to the policymakers. And it's an example of the policymakers trusting the judgment of the experts who are in the room. And that finance team were the experts that were in the room. I'm delighted that the Board of Selectmen accepted, as proposed, the approach made by or proposed by the finance team. And it left everyone feeling like they're skating their lanes, doing their jobs, playing to their strengths. I think our citizens are pleased with the outcome. Our treasurer, Ken Stevens, is very happy that he's sitting on that cash in the bank. And folks who need some relief during these difficult times are getting that relief. It's how an organization works if it's committed to collaboration and communication and really trusting the people in the room. I don't purport to be a finance guru. I know members of the board don't purport to be finance gurus. So putting it in the hands of the experts to make an informed recommendation not only was the right thing to do, not only did we make the right decision, but you asked about morale. Nothing builds morale more than that level of collaboration.
Thank you. And I know you and Paul are sharing a computer today, so I'm going to ask you two more questions and then cut you loose. And then I'll head back over to the district attorney, and we'll finish with Paul, who's going to talk to us about elections and voting during the pandemic. So Tom, my next question for you, I know you've spent a considerable amount of time lately, again, with the experts in the room, retooling our budget because there are anticipated shortfalls in revenue. Can you just tell us about that process?
Sure. We finished our fiscal 21 budget in February. The Board of Selectmen was supportive and the Finance Committee was supportive. We call that a consensus budget. So we finished our consensus budget back in February prior to the significant impact caused by the pandemic. When you look at our budget, it's made up in part, a significant part, of state aid. $5.7 million in state aid. And that state aid flows to us in a variety of ways. The biggest, of course, is Chapter 70. That's the educational budget. Then there's Chapter 90, which is for roads and reconstruction. There's lottery receipts. Over $1 billion in lottery receipts gets distributed to the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. There's also unrestricted local aid, which we use to fund in part our emergency response services. Every one of those categories are going to be reduced unless we get some sort of relief from the federal government. The state budget is expected to decline in revenues from $8 to $10 billion. That $8 to $10 billion in reductions are going to be passed on across the board, but a significant portion is going to hit local aid. So we had to go back and retool our budget, assuming that we're going to receive, we're using a 15% reduction in state aid. That adds up to $750,000 reduction in revenue from the state. We then have to look at the local level and look at local receipts. Room and occupancy revenue is way down. Meals tax, way down. Participation in local receipts that come from the transfer station or the Grays Beach or recreation, all way down. So all in all, we're looking at a reduction of about $1.2 million, which will come proportionately from our schools and from town operations. So approximately 3 weeks ago, with the CFO, we started reorganizing our budget, rebuilding our budget to reflect those reductions. There is some very deep thinking that's going into. It's not as simple as just reducing everything by 15%. We had to go line item by line item, department by department. So in the next week, I'll be meeting with department heads to roll out the proposed plan. We'll get their buy-ins, and by the end of the week, I'll be meeting with each selectman one-on-one to get their input and to review the plan. And on the meeting of the 12th, we intend to take all of that information in from department heads, from the selectmen, and then propose a fiscal 21-year budget, which will be based upon a substantial reduction in revenues. Now, that's a very hard process, and there's no good news that comes out of that. But once again, there can be great team building that comes out of that process. It's not a top-down, here's the number, take it or leave it. There's input, there's feedback from dozens of people that have their thumbprint on this new plan. And by the time we bring it to the Board of Selectmen for a vote, we'll have input from each board member as well. And so it's a very involved process. It's easy to build a budget when you're just saying yes to every request that's made. It's very difficult and very time consuming to rebuild a budget where there's going to be more no's than yeses. And we have to get people to understand the position that every town is in, how we're going to respond to it. And I'm very comfortable, although some very difficult decisions need to be made, that we're going to emerge as a leaner, as an effective organization where we maintain the tremendous services that Kingston provide to its citizens, and we'll do so where our revenues match our expenses, and we'll be a stronger organization for it.
Thank you. And I want to make sure that we have time for our other guests, but just briefly, I know that you are more excited about economic development than anybody in town. And there's never been a more exciting time for economic development opportunities in the town of Kingston, with our wastewater project, with Amazon, Tremmel Crow, and smaller projects like the Maple Street cleanup, electronic billboards, and the solar farm. Knowing how important it is now that we are anticipating a shortfall in revenue, that we get these projects up and running, can you just give us a sense of whether or not these are going to be impacted by COVID-19 or whether or not they're moving full steam ahead?
Josh, I'm so glad you asked that question. You're right. The best way to offset reductions in state aid is to generate your own revenue locally at the local level. Our planning board hasn't missed a beat. Tremmel Crow has now got its special permit for the construction of the units at Kingston Collection. People like to say that's not economic development. That project will put very little pressure on services. We're not increasing police, we're not increasing fire, we're not increasing EMS, and the project itself will generate between $600,000 and $800,000 a year in revenue. Amazon has been before the planning board. They're coming back again next Monday. We expect to finalize their special permit that day. We're doing this all remotely. We're not slowing down at all. The billboard project is a go. After the town meeting vote, they'll be breaking ground within a week. All the engineering is done. The solar project is a go. We had to work out some serious challenges with Eversource. Those challenges have been resolved due to the input of a senior vice president who intervened on our behalf. So all of the major projects, as well as all of the smaller projects, have not missed a day on the calendar due to the efforts of our our planning board, our conservation commission, our town planner. So those revenues are teed up. They're moving forward. I would say that Kingston is among one of the best positioned and financially strong towns on the South Shore. And we're doing everything in our power to make sure that we keep that train rolling. Thank you for asking about economic development. You're right. It's the key to our future.
Well, Tom, thank you for joining us. I'm going to hop back over to DA Cruz and let you and Paul swap out who's on the, I like the mask.
Well, if I'm going to pass by Paul as he takes my seat, I don't want to cough on him. Great to see you, Tim. Be well.
You too, Tom. Nice seeing you.
DA Cruz, I know that there were a couple of things that you really wanted to cover with Kingston residents today, and one of them was the scams that are going on right now. And COVID-19 and social distancing certainly aren't going to stop individuals who are determined to take advantage of unsuspecting victims, steal their identities, personal financial information. Can you speak to some of the scams that you've heard about since COVID-19 and what Kingston residents can do to protect themselves?
Yeah, no, thanks, Josh. There certainly has. It's unfortunate that we have individuals out there that are going to take advantage of a situation like COVID-19, but it's not unusual, but it's unfortunate. And I think the main thing I want to tell people is that to protect yourself and protect your information, because there definitely are unsavory individuals who are going to try to call you up. They're going to try to scare you. They're going to have a scam for you, whether it be they have a vaccine for COVID-19. Trust me, if there's going to be a vaccine or a remedy for COVID-19, you're not going to be getting it on your internet within the next couple of weeks. So you're going to hear about it on television. People, the true doctors that are out there that are working on it, they're going to come up with that information for you, not people who are trying to scare you and say that they can come up with a solution. And some of the scams that are out there that we've seen here in our county that we're actively investigating right now, where we have individuals, a kind of a mixture of old scams with COVID-19 scams. And I'll explain that in that we had recently in the last week here in our county, a senior received a phone call from whom she believed was her nephew. And I say whom she believed because the way that they operate this is that they call up and with a person with kind of a meek sort of voice, and they wait for the person who picked the phone up to volunteer information such as the name. And they'll say, "Oh, is that you, Tim?" And he'll say, "Yes, Auntie, I'm in trouble." And the story that he gave was that I was driving my motor vehicle in New Hampshire, and I was on my telephone, which is a crime up in New Hampshire like it is here. And he goes, and I wasn't paying attention, and I rear-ended a car, and somebody got hurt. I was with my buddy and a friend of mine, and fortunately, his dad's a lawyer, and I'm going to put him on the phone right now. They give the phone to another individual who says, well, because of COVID-19, this happened on a Wednesday. Because of COVID-19, we don't have court in New Hampshire again until Tuesday. So your nephew is going to have to stay in jail for the next 5 or 6 days, unless, of course, there is a back way we can get him out. You have to give us some cash money, and we'll be able to get him and bail him out. And they come up with a very long, convoluted story. But at the end of the day, they talk this woman into going to her bank, taking out $8,000 cash, gave her a phony address where they alleged where they were going to meet and have the exchange of money. And in actuality, once she got the money, she received another phone call saying that they had a courier in the area and the courier could come to her house. And sure enough, a vehicle showed up, a black SUV showed up, an individual got out wearing a mask and went up and they had an exchange in the driveway. And they said, "You're going to hear from your nephew in a couple of hours. He'll be released." And that was the end of it. Of course, she didn't hear from her nephew. She called him up later on that night, and he said, "What are you talking about, Auntie? I wasn't involved in that situation at all." Now you have $8,000 cash gone. So what I say to everybody is, A, be careful out there when people are calling you up and they're trying to trick you. And if it does happen to you, please call the police or please call the DA's office at 508-584-8120, because you shouldn't be embarrassed by things such as this, because the people that are out there trying to talk you out of your money, they're really good at what they do. They're professional thieves. And we need to get the word out so that it doesn't happen to somebody else. The Rockland Police sent out an advisory just a week or so before this one occurred in another town here in Plymouth County. They're targeting our area, they're targeting our seniors. So we need to make sure that individuals realize that uh, guard your information. If somebody alleges they're from a state agency and they call you up or they go email you or text you, remember, a state agency is never going to ask you for your social security number. They're going to not going to ask you for money. They're not going to ask you for your credit card number or your PIN number. If people start asking you that, hang up. But please help us get in front of this by giving us a phone call, and let's see what we can do. Right now, we're working very hard to try to restore those people that were ripped off by these individuals, a week or so back. We're working as a result of the fact that most times what we end up seeing is these sort of cases go beyond the jurisdiction of Plymouth County. So we reach out to the state police who work for us. We'll also work out to the federal authorities, because then most times it actually goes outside the boundaries of Massachusetts. So if you have any questions or if you have any doubts, get a message from them, get a phone number from them, and call us first. We're there to help you. We're there to make sure that we're going to be in a position where we're not chasing money that you put forward, because the problem is that once money's out and once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it doesn't get back in. It's really difficult to get the money back. So the best way is just to be very aware as to what's going on, and be careful also of fraudulent charities. We saw it back after 9/11. People were targeting. I mean, Americans are good people, and they're very generous if they have the resources, and they're willing to reach out and give money to charities that are going to help all sorts of people, and that's great. It really is. But you have, once again, groups that are going out there and they're putting together charities that sound like something you're familiar with. Like we had one back after 9/11. It was the Unified Way. And you go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to make a check to the Unified Way. They're going to put money back in our community. It's going to help people." Well, there is no Unified Way. It's the United Way. It sounds like it. And they try to get you and they try to shock you and they try to use and prey upon your fears. If you have any fears out there, don't hesitate to call law enforcement. Don't hesitate to make sure that we can try to help you before something happens. I think if you do that, you will all feel better off, and will prevent you from really unnecessarily going through a lot of psychic trauma from these individuals who don't really care about any of us, and they would rip any of us off that was trusting of a trusting nature. So that's really the main thing I wanted to say. But if I could also just say, Josh, that we're also and continue to deal with domestic violence issues right now. It's right there, and every town unfortunately has them. And if you or someone is dealing with a domestic violence situation, if it's an imminent threat to you or someone you love, the first phone call should be to 911. But if you're in a longer situation, please know that there is, even though the courts are closed, there is help out there. There's phone numbers you can look at, and I ask you to go to our website, PlymouthDA.com. We have all sorts of information to Operation SafeLink, Brockton Health Imperatives. You can get information out there. We have further links for, we're dealing with the opiate crisis right now. And unfortunately, we're still dealing with opiate overdoses. We work in conjunction, with the Plymouth County Drug Abuse Task Force, which Kingston is a part of, Plymouth County outreach, whereby police will respond to non-fatal opiate overdoses within 12 to 24 hours of bringing help to people. There really is help out there, and we want to be helping you. And if you do have, or if you know somebody who has an opiate issue or an opiate problem, please feel free. Once again, reach out to our website. We can hook you up with Plymouth County Outreach. They have somebody on call 7 days a week. right now. And also Plymouth County Hope, whereby we used to have meetings in churches Tuesdays and Thursdays. They're having Zoom meetings now. So we can get help to people and we can make sure we keep people safe. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. So I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words. And I would just say to everybody, please be safe, be careful. This will all be behind us soon enough. And I'm really proud to be working with everybody here and making sure that we can do that. Thank you.
Um, and I want to make sure we have time to speak with Paul. So I think we're going to go a little over the anticipated time allotment. But DA Cruz, I think Julie has a question that came in for you, and then we'll hop back over to Paul at the townhouse.
Sure.
Hi. Yeah, it wasn't really a question. It was more, I wanted to bring up the DA's website so everyone could see that this is it. And also, if you go down a little bit on the website, he was talking about scams. So there is a whole section on scams. And I'm assuming that that is updated regularly, Mr. Cruz?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Perfect. So all the information you could possibly want is definitely right there at the website. So please do visit that. And then, yes, Josh, we do need to speak to Paul Gallagher about voting.
Yes, thank you. Paul, thank you for sticking around. I want to make sure that I start off with this, though. I think I've said this through a number of different mediums, but I need to thank you and your staff again. You guys have been right there every step of the way throughout the COVID-19 crisis. Jana and Diane in your office have just done yeoman's work in terms of keeping our website updated. That really is our greatest tool to communicate with residents right now. And that entire website is driven by your staff. And I can't thank you enough for your work and the work of both Jana and Diane in helping us get our news and get our updates out to residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you for having me on today. I greatly appreciate it. I'll agree with you, with Diane Poirier and Jana Morrissey. I couldn't do it without them. They're fantastic. They do a great job. The clerk's office has been extremely busy throughout this environment. I'll agree with Tom that let me say that I'm honored and proud to be a part of what's been going on here during the Corona crisis. We've all had contingency plans put together. Saw that, Josh. But the coordination, the cooperation, and the effort from the staff here in the town hall has been tremendous, whether it be remotely from home or here in the office or a mixture of both. I don't think anyone could complain that the town hall has not continued to provide the exceptional effort, the exceptional services that we have prior to the pandemic. So I want to commend all of them and thank them for what they're doing. I said our office has been continuing to provide daily services. It's surprising when you realize how important something can be to someone during a crisis like this, whether they're filing for financial aid, they're doing their taxes, they may have had suffered a loss in their family and may need vital statistics, birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates. And we've been able to provide every service that we have in the past right through up until today. So I think the town should be happy with what's been transpiring over the last several weeks.
And thank you for that. And DA Cruz talked about our court systems, and like our court system, another vital function of local government is the election process. And I know that residents watching probably have a number of questions for you about that. So I'd like to try to work through some of those. But first, can we just start with what I think is the most important question? What are the dates for our upcoming elections?
Okay, so let me just say that I would prefer to try to focus on what we have right now. May 19th is the special state Senate election. It's been postponed once. There's always the chance during these times that it could be postponed again. But at this particular point in time, we have an election scheduled to replace Vinny DiMacedo as our state Senate and senator. And let me just say, I appreciate his efforts over the years and wish him the best of luck. But we do have an election on May 19th, Tuesday, May 19th, and we do intend to have polls open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. And it will be one race to replace Vinny in the general court for the Plymouth and Barnstable County districts. We have James McMahon, who is the Republican challenger, and Susan Moran, who is the Democratic challenger. So what we have done, and I've spent a great deal of time on, is a contingency plan for this election, because we need to keep not only the voters safe, but we need to keep the staff safe. So with our contingency plan, we've really kind of dived into it, and we're hoping for an affirmative vote from the Board of Selectmen today to move Precinct 4, which traditionally votes at the town hall, to the Kingston Elementary School to be combined with all three other precincts. 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be at the Kingston Elementary School. Polls are scheduled to open at 7 a.m. They'll be closing at 8 p.m. We will say that we'll tell you now that you should be prepared to act as though you're going to the supermarket. We can't demand it, but we beg every voter that comes to vote to try and wear a mask. I can't express it more. We have a lot of dedicated and committed poll workers that don't want to be exposed. So we have screens, we have face shields, we have masks, we have gloves. We've made every single contingency that we could, including ordering throwaway pencils so people don't have to reuse pens from the previous voter. So right now, focusing on May 19th, I will say that we do have 6 elections scheduled over the next 7 months. We have both the town election, a recall election, the state's primary in September, the presidential election in November, and the potential for another special election to replace Tammy Murray, who resigned from the Board of Selectmen. So we are going to be busy, and I want to thank ahead of time all of the poll workers that have agreed to come in and work in this environment. As you know, traditionally, the poll worker is someone that's retired or maybe a senior citizen, and they're all compromised or in that category. So we thank them for coming in, and we're going to make every single effort we can to make sure that they continue to be safe and the election goes off without an issue.
Thank you. And with the townhouse closed, and we've been closed for many weeks now, are residents still able to register to vote? Is there a mechanism in place to support them in doing that?
Yeah, we continue to provide every service that we did prior to that. We're making appointments for people that can't come in at certain times when we're working. We've met people outside in the public to try to provide those opportunities. To register to vote, you can go to the town's website under elections information. From there, you'll be able to be directed to a link that will allow you to register to vote. You can go to massvote.org and register to vote there. There's many opportunities online. However, not everyone has access to the internet, so we do provide applications to register to vote and applications for early voting and absentee voting right outside the front door in the plastic town clerk's box. So if you want to register to vote and you're not registered to vote, at this point in time, you can come to the town hall, you can grab an application, you can fill it out and slip it in the drop box, and we have you registered to vote the very next day. Similarly, you can do the same thing for the May 19th election. You can register for an application for an early voting or an absentee voting ballot to be mailed to you by going online, whether it be on the town clerk's page, the town's website, or the state website. But kingstonmass.org, you can get voting information, and right on the left-hand side under the election information, you click on the link and it bring up an application. You send that in to us. We forward you a vote ballot by mail. You return it in the enclosed return envelope, and we'll cast your ballot for you on the 19th. It's pretty simple. You can do it online. You can do it, or you can do it manually here at the townhouse. We've probably processed over 100 at least for the May 19th at this particular point in time, and we expect to get a great deal more.
Thank you for that. And Julie, did you have a question for Paul?
No, actually, I was bringing up the website and the absentee ballot application as he was talking about it, because most of our towns are really stressing for people to go ahead and vote by mail and not have to come into to a facility. So it's really easy to do. As Paul said, please do visit the Kingston website, and there's a bunch of information on there right on the front page of how do I vote, where do I vote, and how do I get an absentee ballot. So we suggest that you do that. Thank you. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, we're doing the homeschooling parenting pac-tv update today. So
Thanks, Saul.
Gotcha.
Paul said hi. So
Josh, if I could just say one more thing, is that we have made every effort to be able to provide information to the public on voting and registrations through every means possible, whether it be print media in town locals, social media on Facebook, pac-tv, WATD, and obviously the town's website. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that the voters are able to vote on May 19th.
Paul, just one final question. I know that even if there's a push being made for folks to vote early, a number of folks will come in the day of, and you did mention that you're really hoping that they'll wear masks when they come to the polls. But just so no one walks in and is shocked by what they see, what can folks expect to see in terms of social distancing, in terms of a different environment than perhaps where they've cast a ballot in the past?
Yeah, the contingency plan addresses all of that. We're gonna from the minute you walk to the door, there'll be 6-foot tapes so that you know that you're staying 6 foot away from each other if a line builds up. You'll enter the polling area, and there'll be assistants there to direct you where you need to go. You'll see screens, big screens at the check-in and the checkout table to protect the poll workers as well as the voter. We're going to provide personal protection equipment, both gloves, masks, face shields for all of the employees that are working that day. And like I said, we ordered pencils, throwaway pencils, so you'll be able to pick that up and throw it away or take it home with you, whatever you might want to do, so that we won't have to worry about cleaning down pens. And as people go to vote at a booth, when they leave, someone will come up behind them and spray it down to make sure that it's clean for the next person. So I would just suggest that people try to have patience with us. We ask for that every election, but I think under these circumstances, if people could have patience and try to do what they can to help us as well as we help them, we'd be grateful.
Great, thank you for that, Paul. Anything else that you want to share with residents before we start to wrap up?
Every election we get complaints from people that they didn't know it was coming, they didn't know that it was today, they didn't know where to go. I just want to stress to people that if you want to have the information, you need to get it yourself. It's available there. Try to utilize pac-tv, the town's website, social media, whatever it might be. But you need to keep yourself informed in these times, for not only everyone else, but for yourself as well. So I would say that, as we move on into this new world that we have, and obviously we have 6 other elections scheduled, you need to keep yourself aware of what's going on and what's transpiring so that you can participate. So it's your responsibility. And I just say, keep yourself up to date, check in and use the town's website as much as possible.
Great. Paul, thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, and please extend everybody's thanks to your entire team. Again, you guys have just been a crucial part of the town's response to COVID-19, and we're all very grateful for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I will extend that to them.
Thank you. District Attorney Cruz, before we wrap up, any parting words for the residents of Kingston?
I would just say it's great to see all the different communities working hard together in these different and challenging times. And just remember that, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling isolated, that reach out to your friends, go online, or you just pick up a phone and call them. There are people there that can help you, and there's people that can make you feel better. All I say is just be safe. And like I said, we'll be through this before you know it.
Thank you. And Julie, I guess just as we start to sign off, I just want to again thank the residents of Kingston for everything that they're doing to combat COVID-19 here in town. It looks like the weather for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday will be pretty nice. So it's warmer weathers. The sun will be out. And while I certainly encourage folks to get outside, get some fresh air, exercise, I do want to impress upon them the importance to heed the governor's extension of the stay-at-home advisory, and to really, make a point to socially distance, continue socially distancing, vigilantly washing their hands, and just doing everything that they can to keep themselves and their community safe. And with that, I look forward to seeing everybody on Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. And that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Josh, and thank you for the guests today, Tim Cruz and Josh Warren and Paul Gallagher, and of course, Tom Coulter. This can be seen again if you go to pac-tv.org/Kingston. Also, if you notice that we have a date stamp on this, every single day we date stamp the information because it can change on a daily basis. So please social distance, be careful, think positive, and we will see you next Tuesday. Good day.